Okay, let's take a look at Big IP DNS Configuration Backup, part of Section 4. Objective 401, we're going to talk about creating a GUI archive backup, TMSH archive backup, and verify and move the backup to remote storage. Alright, so we're in Section 4 now, talking about operations and support. Objective 401 states to identify the process to perform Big IP DNS configuration backup. So there's some examples. Perform the steps in the GUI to create system archive files, issue TMSH commands to create system archive files, and verify file creation and move to remote storage. Okay, so let's first take a look at what's inside a UCS or archive file. So UCS file it's a compressed file that contains the F5 configuration, such as the Big IP specific configuration files, the licenses, user accounts and password information, the DNS zone files and zone runner configuration, and the SSL certificates and keys. You can also view the list of the files saved inside a UCS on the command line locally on the platform. You can do that tar-ztf and then the file name, or you can use an application like 7-zip to open the archive on your desktop. And I should state that when we're talking about UCS, we're not talking about Cisco's UCS platform. The F5 UCS is the user configuration set, and it's a backup file that F5 uses to back up and restore the platform. Okay, so let's run through a GUI backup in version 14. We'll start by going to the GUI and going to System, Archives, and you can click the plus sign here to right away enter the UCS information here to create a new archive. You can also click on just the archives to see that full list of what your already created archives are. Okay, so the new archive, we can give it a file name. Any file name is fine. We can choose to add encryption, enable encryption, or disable encryption. So in this case, we're enabling encryption and then giving it a passphrase because we enabled encryption. The private keys by default are set to include. You can set this to not include the private keys if you have very sensitive information that you don't want to be shared. Okay, we'll click finish and then it will receive that configuration from the device and output the archive file in the var local UCS directory. And notice it appends the .ucs file extension if we don't specify it in the file name. Alright, and if you click OK there, it's going to show you, bring you back to the archive screen, and you can see the file name created, the date we created it, and the size of it. Okay, in addition to using the GUI, you can also use the TMSH command or CLI backup. So first we'll specify the TMSH savesys UCS. We can specify the directory we want it in if it's different than the var local directory. We can specify var temp, for instance, then the file name, and if we need a passphrase associated with the UCS. To open or restore the UCS, you will need to enter the passphrase used when you initially set up the backup. Okay. Alright, we can also specify the no private key option, which we saw in the GUI as well. So this does not include the SSL certificates and keys if we have this extension or option on there. Okay, var local UCS is the default location, so we can cd to the var local UCS directory and list our UCS files. To view all the keys, and these are the variables that are used to create the UCS file, we can view the keys in the cs.dat to display all the relevant information related to what the archive operations are doing. So we can do a grep save **** and then specify that cs.dat, and this will give us all the information related to what's being saved. Okay, so let's take a look at that cs.dat. I am on version 14. You can see right here. And let's just do a copy that grep, and we're just going to look for that anything grep for save dot anything dot save, and then inside that dot directory. Okay, so we start the save, and it shows you all the flags used and what it's doing for saving the UCS file. So the save.x.file is the file that needs to be saved in the UCS file. Before saving files, after saving files, ignore should not be saved in the UCS file. The files under the directory that need to be saved, and the dir opt is the directory are optional to be saved in the UCS. So if you're ever curious about what files are stored in the UCS, you can get more information here. Okay, and also if you're curious about the SSL certificate and private keys, notice in the cs.dat, if we just do a cat of the file, and we'll go up to this section for ssl.key. It says the SSL key can't always be saved since users don't always want to save private keys. What will be saved under SSL key will be handled by script cert save pre. So in that case, in the same directory, we can go to cert save pre, and we can see all the iterations it's using to copy the SSL keys and certificates to restore. Okay, so you've created the archive. Now we can move off the archive locally or manually by going to the HTTPS GUI and going to System Archives and just clicking on the UCS file, and then we can download it. Also restoring that same UCS archive locally to the box, you would have to type in that passphrase you used to create the archive and click restore. But in this case, we're just downloading the UCS file. Okay, so in addition to moving off the archive from the GUI, we can also use some CLI commands in different methods to move the UCS archive to a remote location. All right, so the first thing we can do is log into the F5 CLI and run the SCP command to point the UCS file that we created to a specific server running SCP with the directory and the destination directory and file name. We can also use WinSCP on a Windows host that's SSH version 2 compatible, and log in with the user with bash access and then browse to that archive and pull it off. You can also use the F5.2 FTP host, and this is the same process for F5.2 FTP. We just log into the F5 CLI, go to that specified directory where that UCS is, and then use the SFTP utility to log into that server and put the UCS file in there. There's a very good notable mention that I've used for automation or automated backup process, and you can do this via an IAP. So there's currently support around various options that you can just set up in an IAP to run in an automated fashion. So you can specify what type of method you would like to use and how often you would like to run. So it's a really nice method, and it's gone through a lot of iterations to get where it is today. Okay, so in this video we covered GUI archive backup, TMSH archive backup, and verifying and moving the backup to remote storage. So up next in section 4, we're going to talk about restoring the big IP DNS configuration. So I will see you in the next one.